that? Well, PMQs is usually a bit of a bear pitch, shouting, jeering, all the papers being shaken, but not today, with events in the Middle East and the tragic loss of life in Gaza yesterday. MPs on all sides of the House were aware that it wouldn't exactly be a good look to behave like squabbling children. So no playground politics, but grown-up debate, careful statements, not rush into judgment over the blast at the hospital in Gaza. Well, our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue, is here, keeping across PMQs as always. What did you see?
Well, I think let's start with a clip from Sajid Javid, obviously, used to be senior cabinet member. And I think this just sort of sums up the mood in the House, because it wasn't really like anything I've seen before. Let's have a listen.
It shames this whole House that British Jews have been subject to such vile abuse and hatred in recent days. Anti-Semitism and all hate crimes, they fly in the face of British values. And we should not allow events abroad, no matter how horrific they are, to be used to sow seeds of division in our own country.
And Ali, you were over there in the House listening. What was the mood like?
As I say, I haven't really seen anything like that at PMQs before. Obviously, things felt different. Normally, recess is over, they're back, it's pretty feisty, pretty combative. But obviously, when the Prime Minister took to the dispatch box, talked about the escalation overnight, the chamber fell silent. And what we've seen again and again in the last week, was unity, really, between Labour and the Conservatives. Look at this.
I know the whole House will have been shocked by the scenes at Al-Ali Hospital. Any loss of innocent life is a dreadful tragedy. And everyone will be thinking both of those who have lost their lives and the families that they leave behind. We should not rush to judgment before we have all the facts on this awful situation. Every member will know that the words we say here have an impact beyond this House.
We are still mourning the terrorist attack on Israel last week. Jews taken hostage, mutilated, slaughtered. And yesterday I met the families of some of the British hostages held by Hamas. Every minute of every hour of every day, they hope for good news, but fear the worst.
It's a really difficult tone, isn't it? A very somber tone. Was there anything that felt like, I guess, normal Prime Minister's questions, or was the somber tone more what we're expecting?
I think there were a few moments that felt slightly more normal on domestic policy. I think what was interesting from Keir Starmer there is he talked about meeting the families. At that stage, maybe he was trying to draw a bit of a division with the Prime Minister who hadn't met hostages' families. Since then, though, we understand Rishi Sunak has met one family. He's planning on meeting more. Also worth mentioning, 2 MPs, one Conservative, one SNP MP, asking Rishi Sunak to urge caution from Israel, and this was Rishi Sunak's response to that.
Mr. Speaker, as a friend, we will always urge Israel to take every possible practical precaution to avoid harming civilians and indeed to act within international law, as their president has said that their armed forces will do, whilst recognising the incredible complexity and difficulty of the situation on the ground. And it does bear repeating, Hamas is a terrorist organisation that embeds themselves inside of civilian populations.
Worth saying that after Prime Minister's questions, we hear from the Prime Minister's spokesperson. They said, and I quote, that it's deeply irresponsible to jump to conclusions over the explosion at the hospital in Gaza last night. And that was a message echoed by Stephen Crabb, former Cabinet Minister.
Would the Prime Minister please make the point again that the way that this conflict is being reported has massive implications for our Jewish community, and that any information coming from Hamas must be treated with a degree of scrutiny and cross-examination that is sadly sometimes lacking.
I also think it's worth us listening to what we heard from Stephen Flynn, the SNP leader in Westminster.
Many of the images emanating from Gaza in recent days will shock us all to the core. So can I ask the Prime Minister, will he join with us on these benches and call for an immediate ceasefire in the region?
It feels as if, party conferences are almost like a different lifetime away when we were talking about all kinds of domestic issues. But I guess there was a couple of flickers of what would be, on a normal time for us, really big news stories.
Definitely. I think the moment where it felt like we were just about getting back to normal PMQs was over HS2. Obviously, this was the big conference announcement for the Conservatives. Ordinarily, you would have had a chamber that absolutely erupted at that moment. And we did hear from a few Conservatives. Here's one of them.
Across the region, it should include the much-needed upgrade to the Penistone line running from Huddersfield through my constituency in Sheffield to Sheffield.
The loudest cheers were when the former SNP MP Lisa Campbell crossed the floor to join the Conservative Party for the very first time, sitting next to Theresa May.
It's fine.
There you go. It was a big moment, that, wasn't it? When you saw the new Conservative MP.
Yeah, and this is the new Labour MP, the seat they won in Rutherglen, Hamilton West, being shake a moment of cross-party unity when Stephen Flynn goes across to shake his hand. But here I want to highlight this, some of the somber faces on both front benches today. And I think that sort of sums it up, really, because, yes, there were some moments where it felt like we were back to domestic politics, the cut and thrust of PMQs, but overall the mood was totally muted. There really was very little rowdiness, particularly on the front benches. Unsurprisingly, everything has been overshadowed by what was happening in the Middle East.
Ali, thank you very much for keeping us up to date on the latest from Prime Minister's questions.